It was 7:42 in the morning. The date was August 17th, 1943. Technical Sergeant James McKenna was on Dodorura Airfield in New Guinea. He knelt under the left wing of a P-38 Lightning. He watched his pilot get ready for a mission. McKenna felt this pilot might not survive. The pilot was Lieutenant Robert Hayes. He was 23 years old. Hayes had flown 6 combat missions. He had not shot down any enemy planes. The Japanese had sent 18 Mitsubishi Zero fighters. Their goal was to intercept the morning patrol. Hayes would fly directly toward them. McKenna had worked on P-38s for 8 months. He knew these aircraft completely. It was a fighter with 2 engines. It had a twin boom shape. It flew fast in a straight line. It was very strong at high altitudes, but the P-38 had a big problem. This flaw was killing American pilots every day. It could not turn as well as a Zero. The Zero was lighter and more agile. It could make a full horizontal turn in half the time. A P-38 needed twice as long in a dogfight. This difference in turning meant death. American rules said P-38 pilots should never turn with a Zero. They should never try to outmaneuver them. Pilots were told to use speed. They were told to use high altitude. They should dive in, shoot, then climb out. It was a hit-and-run tactic. They should not get caught in a turning fight. Hayes had followed these rules 5 times. It had not worked. The Zeros were too clever. They would trick American pilots into turning. Then they would cut inside their turn radius. They would get behind them. Then they would shoot them down. The 5th Air Force had lost 37 P-38s in the last 6 weeks. Most were shot down after being caught in turning fights. They could not escape these fights. McKenna had seen too many pilots die. They were good men, really just young men. They climbed into their P-38s with great belief. Many came back in body bags. Some did not come back at all. The training manual said the problem was pilot error. The instructors said these pilots did not follow the rules, but McKenna knew better. The problem was not the pilots. It was the control cables. The P-38's aileron control cables ran through the 2 booms. They went to the tail section. Then they moved forward through pulleys. They connected to the wing control surfaces. This cable system had some slack. It was not much. Maybe 3/8 of an inch at full movement. But that tiny bit of slack caused a delay. It was between moving the stick and the aileron responding. At high speeds, this delay did not matter. But at low speeds, during sharp turning moves, that fraction of a second delay was critical. It was the difference between turning inside a Zero's path and getting shot down. McKenna had told the engineering officer about this 2 months ago. The officer said the cable tension was correct. Factory standards allowed for that slack. Changing it would make the aircraft warranty invalid. Also, no field mechanic had permission to change flight control systems. That needed approval from Lockheed. Lockheed was 7,000 miles away in California, so McKenna did something against every rule. He broke every regulation in the Army Air Force maintenance manual. He took a piece of piano wire. It came from a damaged aircraft. He cut it to 6 inches. He bent it into a Z shape. He then installed it as a tensioner. It went on Lieutenant Hayes's left aileron control cable. This change took 8 minutes. It added 0.4 pounds of tension to the cable. It removed the slack completely. Nobody noticed the change. The inspection crew did not check cable tension that morning. They were focused on engine oil levels. They also checked ammunition loads. McKenna said nothing about what he had done. He watched Hayes taxi to the runway. He watched him take off. He watched the P-38 vanish into the morning sky. It was heading toward the Japanese fighters. What happened in the next 17 minutes would change things. It would change how every P-38 in the Pacific flew. The first pilot McKenna lost to a Zero was Lieutenant David Chen. This was on July 9, 1943. Chen had been in the combat area for 3 weeks. McKenna had worked on his aircraft every morning. They often talked about California. Chen was from Sacramento. McKenna was from Long Beach. They had both worked on cars before the war. Chen took off at 06:15 for a fighter sweep mission. He returned 2 hours later. His left boom had 3 bullet holes. He told a story about a Zero. It had gotten inside his turn. Chen said he tried to roll out and dive away. That is what the manual said to do. But the airplane felt slow to react. It seemed there was a delay. This delay was between his stick movement and the aircraft's roll. The Zero almost got him. The only thing that saved him was his wingman. His wingman shot the Zero off Chen's tail. McKenna looked at the bullet holes. They were in a close group. It was perfect aim. The Zero pilot had led Chen perfectly. He had guessed exactly where Chen's plane would be. That should not have been possible. Not if Chen had rolled hard and dove at once. Unless the airplane had delayed just long enough. Just long enough for the Zero to get the right shot. Chen did not fly again for a while. His aircraft went back for repairs. McKenna never saw him after that. 3 weeks later, he heard Chen had died. He was killed flying a different P-38. This happened over Rabaul. It was the same story. He was caught in a turning fight. He could not roll out fast enough. The second pilot was Captain William Morrison. Morrison was a flight leader. He was very skilled. He had 11 kills. He knew the P-38 very well. He knew its limits. He flew smartly. On August 3rd, Morrison's flight met 8 Zeros. This was at 12,000 feet over Oro Bay. Morrison shot down 1 Zero on his first pass. He came around for another attack. 2 Zeros turned quickly toward him. McKenna heard the radio calls afterward. Morrison tried to flip upside down. He then tried to dive away in a split S move. He called out that his controls felt soft. The Zeros stayed with him during the maneuver. They shot him down at 4,000 feet. Morrison's wingman said it looked like Morrison's plane was not reacting quickly enough. It seemed like he was fighting the controls. Morrison died in the crash. Morrison's crew chief was a friend of McKenna's. His name was Rodriguez. He was from Texas. Rodriguez felt sure something was wrong with Morrison's aircraft. He checked everything after the wreckage was found. He checked engine settings. He checked control surface alignment. He checked cable tensions. Everything was within the correct limits. There was nothing wrong with the plane. The official report blamed pilot error. Rodriguez did not believe it. Neither did McKenna. By mid-August, McKenna had seen 17 pilots die. Some he knew well. Most he had only met briefly. This was during pre-flight checks. But he had worked on all their aircraft. He had signed off their maintenance logs. He had watched them taxi out. He had watched them take off. Some pilots came back. Some did not. The ones who came back told the same story. The P-38 felt slow to react. This happened during sharp turns. It was like a slight delay. A delay between moving the controls and the aircraft reacting. Most pilots thought that was normal for the plane. It was a heavy fighter. It had large control surfaces. Some delay was expected, but McKenna knew that was not normal. He had felt that delay with his own hands. This was when he worked on the control cables. It was that tiny bit of slack in the system. He started paying attention to the sound the cables made. He heard it when he tightened them during maintenance. There was a special sound. It was a low twang when you plucked them. Loose cables sounded different from tight cables. McKenna could hear the difference. Every P-38 on the flight line had cables that sounded a bit loose. They were within limits, but still loose. He told Rodriguez about this one evening. This was after Morrison had died. Rodriguez asked what could be done about it. McKenna said, "Nothing officially." He added, "But unofficially there was a way." He said it would mean breaking rules. These rules could get them both punished by military court. The problem was not that American pilots did not know what to do. They knew the rules. Every briefing stressed it. Every training flight practiced it. Never turn with a Zero. Use speed, use altitude. Hit and run. The rules were very clear. The problem was that real combat did not follow rules. Lieutenant Robert Hayes had been in New Guinea for 2 months. He was 23 years old. He was a farm boy from Iowa. He had flown 6 combat missions. He had not shot down any enemy planes. This was not because he was a poor pilot. It was because he followed the rules. And the rules kept putting him in spots. In these spots, he could not get a shot. On his 3rd mission, Hayes dove on a Zero. He came from a high altitude. He built up speed to 400 miles per hour. He attacked from the sun's direction. This was just like the manual said. He got the Zero in his gun sight. He began to aim for the target. The Zero quickly rolled left, then it dove down. Hayes tried to follow. His P-38 rolled into the turn, but it felt like it was moving through thick mud. By the time his aircraft aimed where he wanted, the Zero was gone. Hayes pulled out of the dive. He climbed back to a high altitude. He had not fired a single shot. His fourth mission was worse. Hayes and his wingmen attacked 2 Zeros. This was at 15,000 feet. Hayes fired the first burst of shots. He missed. The Zero turned sharply right. Hayes rolled to follow. His wingman called out. 2 more Zeros were coming from above. Hayes tried to roll back level. He tried to dive away. The airplane responded, but slowly. It was just slow enough. One of the diving Zeros fired. It sent a 3-second burst into Hayes's right boom. These were 20mm cannon shells. They did not break through, but they scared Hayes very badly. He broke off the fight. He raced for home with his engines smoking. On his 5th mission, Hayes watched his wingman die. The wingman's name was Lieutenant Thomas Parker. He was 21 years old. He was from Boston. They had trained together. On August 14th, Parker got separated. This happened during a dogfight over Finchhafen. 2 Zeros got behind him. Parker tried everything. He rolled hard. He reversed direction. He tried to scissor. The Zero stayed with him through every move. Hayes heard Parker on the radio. He was calling for help. He heard the fear in his voice. He heard him say his airplane was not turning fast enough. He heard the gunfire. He heard Parker scream. Then there was silence. Hayes did not sleep that night. Most of the squadron did not either. Parker's bed stayed empty. His personal items were packed up. They were shipped home. His P-38 was marked as lost in combat. The maintenance log showed no mechanical problems. The official reason was pilot error. This happened during defensive moves. McKenna had worked on Parker's aircraft. This was the morning Parker died. Everything was perfect. Engine timing, control surface alignment, cable tension, all were within limits. The airplane was fine, but Parker was dead anyway, and McKenna knew why. That fraction of a second delay in the controls. That tiny bit of slack the manual called acceptable. It had killed Parker, just like it had killed Morrison and Chen. It had killed 14 others too. The worst part was the smell. Every morning McKenna worked in the maintenance area. The smell of aviation fuel filled his nose, also hot metal and hydraulic fluid. It was the smell of aircraft getting ready for battle. Some of those aircraft would come back, some would not. And McKenna would be there the next morning. He would smell the same smells. He would work on more aircraft. He would watch more pilots walk out. They went to machines that could not respond fast enough. These machines could not keep them alive. On the evening of August 16th, Hayes came to the maintenance area. He found McKenna working on his assigned P-38. Hayes asked if McKenna could do anything. Anything to make the airplane roll faster? Anything at all. Hayes said he did not care if it broke rules. He just wanted a chance to live. McKenna looked at Hayes. He saw the fear. He saw the desperation. He saw a young man who knew he would die if nothing changed. McKenna told Hayes to come back in the morning. He would see what he could do. McKenna worked alone that night. The maintenance hangar was quiet after 2,300 hours. Most of the crew had gone to sleep. The only sounds were the distant rumble of generators and the buzz of insects against the overhead lights. The air smelled like engine oil. It also smelled like tropical humidity. He removed the inspection panel. It was on Hayes's P-38 left boom. The metal was still warm from the day's sun. Inside, the aileron control cable ran through pulleys. It went toward the tail section. McKenna grabbed the cable with both hands. He pulled it. He felt the slack, maybe 3/8 of an inch of play. Then the tension caught. His hands were covered in grease. His fingers ached from a full day of maintenance work. But he could feel that slack clearly. It was wrong. He knew it was wrong. The piano wire came from a wrecked P-38. That aircraft had crashed 2 weeks earlier. The plane was scrap, but McKenna had taken useful parts. He did this before it went to the depot. This included a 6-inch piece of strong piano wire. It was from the rudder trim system. He had kept it in his tool bag. He did not really know why. Now he knew. He sat on the hangar floor with the wire. He had a pair of pliers. He bent the wire into a Z shape. The wire was stiff. It fought against the pliers. His hand slipped twice. He cut his thumb on the second try. The blood made the wire slippery. He wiped it on his work clothes. He kept working. It took him 8 minutes to get the bend right. The Z shape would act as a tensioner inside the cable. It would add just enough pressure to the cable. This would remove all the slack. Installing it was harder. The space inside the boom was tight. McKenna had to work with one hand. He held a flashlight with the other. The beam kept moving. Shadows jumped across the cable system. His shoulder pressed against the boom structure. The metal edge cut into his arm. He felt sweat running down his back. This was despite the night air. He disconnected the cable at the pulley joint. His fingers fumbled with the clevis pin. He dropped it. He heard it bounce somewhere inside the boom. He spent 5 minutes feeling around in the dark. Finally, he found it. The whole time his heart was pounding. If the engineering officer found him making unauthorized changes to a flight control system, he would face a military court, maybe a dishonorable discharge, possibly even prison time, but Hayes was going to die. Die if McKenna did not do something. He put the piano wire tensioner in place. It went between the cable end and the pulley. He reconnected the cable. The fit was tight. He had to force the clevis pin through. When it finally clicked into place, he tested the tension by hand. He pulled on the cable. No slack. The control surface moved at once. It was perfect. McKenna replaced the inspection panel. He cleaned up his tools. He wiped the blood off the wire and his hands. He walked out of the hangar at 01:15. The tropical night was humid and still. Somewhere far away, he heard aircraft engines, Japanese night raiders probably. The sound made his stomach tighten. He had just changed a flight control system. He had no permission. He used a part not meant for that. He broke at least a dozen rules. If the change failed during the flight, Hayes would crash, and McKenna would be held responsible. But if it worked, Hayes might live. McKenna went to his bunk. He did not sleep. He watched the ceiling until dawn. At 06:30, he walked to the flight line. He watched the crew fuel and arm Hayes's aircraft. He watched Hayes walk out for his pre-flight briefing. He watched him climb into the cockpit. At 07:42, Hayes took off. McKenna stood on the flight line. He watched the P-38 climb into the morning sky. He watched it join formation. There were 16 other aircraft. He watched them head northwest. They were flying toward Japanese airspace. And then all he could do was wait. The fight began at 08:14. Hayes's flight had 4 P-38s. They met 9 zeros. This was at 13,000 feet over the Huon Gulf. The morning sun was behind them. It was a perfect setup for a diving attack. Hayes was flying in the number 3 position. His flight leader called out the enemy. They rolled into the attack. Hayes picked a zero at the back of the enemy group. He dove from high up. He built speed to 380 miles per hour. The zero grew bigger in his gun sight. Hayes could see the painted rising sun on its body. He could see the pilot's head in the canopy. He pressed the trigger. The .450 caliber machine guns and the single 20mm cannon fired loudly. Tracer bullets shot out. Most missed. A few hits sparked off the Zero's wing. It was not enough to bring it down. The Zero quickly rolled right, then it dove down. Hayes rolled to follow. That is when he felt it. The airplane responded instantly. No delay, no lag. The stick moved. The aircraft rolled immediately. Hayes had never felt his P-38 move like that. It was like the airplane had been waiting for his order. It did what he asked the moment he asked it. He rolled 90 degrees. It felt like half the usual time. He got his nose down. The Zero was right there in his sights. He fired again, a 3-second burst. The rounds traveled up the Zero's body, from its tail to the cockpit. The Zero's engine blew up. Pieces flew off. The aircraft flipped upside down. It fell toward the jungle below. It left a trail of black smoke. This was Hayes's first kill. But there was no time to celebrate. His wingman called out. Zeros were diving from above. Hayes looked up. He saw 3 of them coming down. They were in a shallow dive. They were coming fast. They had seen him shoot down their friend. Now they wanted revenge. Hayes pushed the throttles forward. He began to climb. But the Zeros were faster in their dive. They would be on him in seconds. His only choice was to turn back and fight. Every instinct told him to keep climbing. To keep running, that was the rule. But following the rule meant dying today. He rolled sharply left. He pulled back on the stick. The P-38 snapped around. It was like nothing he had ever felt. The nose came across the horizon. He saw the lead Zero. It was turning to follow him. But it had not expected Hayes to turn so fast. The Zero was in a bad spot. It was exposed. Hayes aimed ahead. He fired. He hit the Zero on the left wing. The wing bent. The Zero tumbled down. 2 kills in 30 seconds. The other 2 Zeros tried to scissor with him. They took turns to make him overshoot. Hayes stayed with them. Every time they changed direction, his P-38 snapped into the turn right away. No delay, no fighting the controls. The airplane did exactly what he wanted. It did it the moment he wanted it. It felt like flying a different aircraft. Like someone had removed hidden weights from the control system. 1-0 made a mistake. It turned too hard. It lost too much speed. Hayes got inside its turn. It was close range, maybe 200 feet away. He fired. He could not miss. The Zero broke apart. Pieces of the aircraft fell past Hayes's canopy. He felt the P-38 shake. Debris hit his right boom. 3 kills. The fourth Zero ran away. Hayes did not chase it. He was low on fuel and ammunition. He climbed back to a higher altitude. He met up with what was left of his flight. They headed home. The whole fight lasted 7 minutes. When Hayes landed at Dodorura at 0903, McKenna was waiting. He was on the flight line. Hayes shut down the engines. He climbed out of the cockpit. His hands were shaking. His flight suit was wet with sweat. He walked straight to McKenna. Hayes said 2 words. It worked. What neither of them realized was that 6 other pilots had seen Hayes's fight. They watched from a high altitude. Captain Frank Mitchell saw the entire battle. He was at 15,000 feet. Mitchell was a flight leader. He was in the 475th Fighter Group. He had been watching Hayes's group fight the Zeros below. That is when he noticed something unusual. Hayes's P-38 was rolling faster than any Lightning Mitchell had ever seen. The aircraft moved through maneuvers very quickly, like it weighed half as much as it should. Mitchell knew every pilot in the area. He knew their skill levels. Hayes was good, but not that good. Something was different about his airplane. After landing, Mitchell found Hayes. Hayes was in the debriefing room. Hayes was still full of adrenaline. His hands shook as he wrote his combat report. 3 confirmed kills. Mitchell asked him what was different. Hayes said he did not know. His airplane just responded better that day. Faster. Mitchell asked if maintenance had done anything to the aircraft. Hayes said he should talk to Technical Sergeant McKenna. Mitchell found McKenna in the maintenance area 2 hours later. McKenna was working on a different P-38. His hands were black with grease. His work clothes were stained with hydraulic fluid. Mitchell asked him directly, "What did you do to Hayes's airplane?" McKenna looked at him for a long moment. Then he told him about the piano wire tensioner, the cable change, the unauthorized modification to the flight control system. Mitchell listened without interrupting. When McKenna finished, Mitchell asked, could he do the same change to Mitchell's aircraft? McKenna said yes, but Mitchell had to understand the risks. The change was not approved. It was not tested. If something went wrong, both of them would face charges. Mitchell said he did not care. Mitchell had lost 4 pilots recently. All were trapped in turning fights. He wanted something to help them survive. Regulations could simply wait. That evening, McKenna modified Mitchell's P-38. He used the same piano wire part. The installation was done the same way. Mitchell flew it next morning. He came back raving about the improvement. The plane rolled like a fighter. It felt much better than a truck, he told his wingman. His wingman wanted this same change. By August 20th, McKenna had modified 9 aircraft. Word spread quickly through the squadron. Pilots asked their crew chiefs. They wanted to know about the cable fix. Some crew chiefs refused. They said it was against the rules. Others were willing to try. McKenna showed them how. Cut the piano wire, bend it into a Z shape, install it as a cable tightener. It took 8 minutes. This changed everything. The modification spread from pilot to pilot. Mechanics shared it with mechanics. There was no official paperwork. No engineering approval existed, just quiet talks in the ready room. They also talked in the maintenance area. Hayes shot down 2 more Zeros. This was on August 22nd. He used the modified controls. Mitchell got 3 on August 25th. Other pilots returned from missions with kills. The statistics were impossible to ignore. Lieutenant James Watkins was a crew chief. He was with the 49th Fighter Group. They were stationed at Goosap. He heard about the change from a pilot. This pilot transferred from Dodorura. Watkins was doubtful, but he tried it. He put it on 1 aircraft. The pilot came back from the next mission. He had his first kill. This was after 8 weeks of combat. Watkins modified 4 more aircraft. Other crew chiefs in the 49th started doing it. By early September, maybe 40 P-38s. These were in New Guinea. They all had the modification. The engineering officer at Dodorura noticed something. He could not figure out what it was. Control cable tensions checked out. This was during inspections. Crew chiefs removed the tensioners beforehand. They reinstalled them afterward. Pilots knew, mechanics knew. Nobody told the officers. The kill ratio began to shift. In July, American pilots lost 2 P-38s. This was for every 0 destroyed. In August, it was 1.3 to 1. By September, it was nearly even. Something had definitely changed, but officially, nobody knew what it was. Then the Japanese pilots noticed. They first reported the change. This was in late August. Flight reports from the 11th Air Fleet said American P-38s were flying. They moved more aggressively. They rolled faster into turns. They reversed direction more quickly. The reports noted tactics. These had worked for months. Now they were suddenly failing. Lieutenant Commander Saburo Sakai was a top Japanese ace. He had 64 confirmed kills. He fought American pilots since Pearl Harbor. On September 3, 1943, Sakai engaged a P-38. This was over Waiwak. He used his standard tactic. He drew the American into a turning fight. He waited for the P-38 to begin its roll. Then he snapped his turn back. He went the opposite direction. This was to get inside the American's turning radius. But the P-38 reversed with him. Sakai had done this maneuver many times. He knew how long a P-38 took to roll. He knew the timing perfectly. Yet this P-38 rolled faster than it should have. Sakai barely avoided a head-on crash. The American got guns on him. Sakai had to dive away. He returned to base confused. He was also frustrated. Other experienced Japanese pilots reported similar encounters. Americans were not flying differently. They still used the same tactics, but their aircraft responded faster. It was a fractional change. But it was enough to matter. It disrupted the timing. Japanese pilots had learned to exploit this. Japanese intelligence tried to find out what changed. They examined wreckage from downed P-38s. They found no obvious modifications. The aircraft looked identical to planes they fought for months. The engines were the same. The armament was the same. Nothing visible had changed. What the Japanese did not know. The change was hidden inside the boom. It was a 6-inch piece of piano wire. It looked like original equipment. Even if found, they might not have understood its purpose. It was not a new weapon system. It was not a new engine. Just a minor change to control cable tension, but that minor change was killing their pilots. By mid-September, Japanese pilots were losing aircraft. P-38s were causing these losses. This rate was not seen since early in the war. The psychological impact was significant. For 2 years, 0 pilots owned the sky. They dominated turning fights. They knew they could outmaneuver any American plane. That confidence was breaking down. Pilots who pressed attacks became cautious. They grew hesitant. They were unsure if their tactics would still work. The Japanese tried to adapt. Some pilots stopped turning fights with P-38s. They used hit-and-run tactics instead, but that meant giving up their main advantage. The 0 strength was maneuverability. Fighting like a P-38 meant fighting on American terms. The P-38 was faster. It was more heavily armed. It could also take more damage. Other pilots tried to compensate. They became more aggressive. They closed to shorter range before firing. They took more risks, but aggression without out-turning the enemy. That just meant dying faster. Several experienced Japanese pilots were killed in September. They tried tactics that had worked perfectly in July. The fundamental problem for Japanese pilots. They fought an enemy they could not see. They knew something had changed, but they did not know what. They could not figure out how to counter it. You cannot develop tactics against a modification. One you do not know exists. By the end of September, the 11th Air Fleet lost 38 fighters. These were in combat with P-38s. American losses in the same period were 22 aircraft. The ratio had reversed. For the first time in the Pacific War, P-38s were killing Zeros. This was at a better than 1-to-1 rate. Japanese command ordered pilots. They must avoid P-38s. This was unless they had a big numerical advantage. That order marked a turning point. The 0 had gone from hunter to hunted. It all came down to a piece of piano wire. Nobody was supposed to install it. The modification never became official during the war. The Army Air Force Engineering Command learned about it. This was in October 1943. A maintenance inspector at Dodora noticed inconsistent readings. These were for cable tension. He traced the issues to the piano wire tensioners. He wrote a report. He sent it up the chain of command. The report sat on desks for 3 weeks. Officers debated what to do. The modification violated regulations, but it was working. Fighter squadrons using it had much better kill ratios. Pilots were surviving. The question was not if the modification helped. It was whether to punish the mechanics. They installed it without authorization, or quietly approve it after the fact. In November, Lockheed sent an engineering team to New Guinea. They went to evaluate the modification. They tested it. They measured the cable tension. They calculated stress loads. They ran flight tests. Their conclusion was clear. The modification was safe and effective. It should have been part of the original design. Lockheed integrated a similar tensioning system. This was into the P-38J model. That model entered production in December 1943. But McKenna never received official credit. No commendation, no medal, no mention in any report. Official Lockheed documentation attributed the improvement. It was to engineering analysis. McKenna's name did not appear anywhere. Hayes survived the war. He flew 63 combat missions. He shot down 11 Japanese aircraft. He returned to Iowa in 1945. He married his high school sweetheart. They had 4 children. He worked as a crop duster for 37 years. He never forgot what McKenna had done. Every year on August 17th, Hayes called McKenna. He thanked him for saving his life. Mitchell also survived. He became a squadron commander. He led his unit through the Philippines campaign. He shot down 16 aircraft. After the war, he stayed in the Air Force. He retired as a colonel in 1963. He told McKenna's story to every young maintenance officer. He supervised them. He made sure they understood this. Sometimes the best solutions come from enlisted mechanics. They see problems engineers miss. McKenna stayed in the Army Air Force until 1946. He returned to California. He went back to working on cars. He opened his own garage in Long Beach in 1948. He worked on engines for 42 years. He never talked much about the war. When people asked, he would say he was a mechanic. He fixed airplanes, that's all. In 1991, a military historian researched P-38 modifications. He found references to the piano wire tensioner. These were in maintenance logs from New Guinea. The historian tracked down McKenna. He used veteran registries. McKenna was 73 years old then. He still worked part-time in his garage. The historian asked him about the modification. McKenna confirmed the story. He said it was nothing special, just something that needed doing. The historian estimated the modification saved many lives, perhaps 80 to 100 American pilots. This was based on improved survival rates. These were in squadrons that used it. McKenna said he never counted. He just remembered the pilots who came back: Hayes, Mitchell, Watkins, and the others. That was enough for him. James McKenna died in 2006. He was 88 years old. He was buried in Pacific View Memorial Park in California. His obituary mentioned his service in World War II. It listed him as an aircraft mechanic. It did not mention the piano wire tensioner. It did not mention he changed how American fighters flew. It did not mention he broke regulations to save lives. His garage in Long Beach is still there. It has a different owner now. But on the back office wall, a faded photograph hangs there. It shows a young mechanic in coveralls. He stands next to a P-38 Lightning. The back shows the date, August 1943. The place, New Guinea. That is how innovation truly happens in war. Not through official channels, not through engineering committees. It comes through sergeants and mechanics. They see problems, they find solutions. They do not wait for permission to save lives.